We were underage. We were little girls.
I was 16.
I was 16.
I started going to him when I was like 14, 15, 14 turning 15.
If you think at 14, $200, that's a lot of money at 14 years old. I mean, that's a lot of money now.
She's like, oh, do you need to make any extra money? I'm like, yeah. She's like, okay, I can give you, like $200. It's this older guy in Palm Beach. He gets a lot of massages from girls. That was really.
They were recruited by someone who was adept at finding girls that would be willing to, go to a house for a few $100s, and as it started out, give a man a back rub, but many cases it turned into something far worse than that, elevated to a crime, and a serious crime, in some cases sexual batteries.
My life would have been different if I would have never went to Jeffrey Epstein's house. It was just a dark turning point in my life.
Oh my gosh, I was 14 years old. Like, what the hell do you know when you're that young?
Jennifer Arose grew up in New York with dreams of becoming a Broadway actress. She was thrilled when she was accepted to a performing arts high school in the city. And it was outside that school back in 2001, she says, a woman first approached her.
She was definitely trying to get to know me, trying to find out, where I was from, where I grew up, who I lived with.
Arose says the woman kept showing up, talking to her, sometimes offering to buy her lunch or a soda.
The first time she brought up the name Jeffrey Epstein, how did she describe him to you?
He was just a great guy. He's just saying, he's helped me. I've struggled. She was similar to me.
Did she say he could help you with your career?
That was a big part of it.
And when you think of her now, you used the phrase, you said the recruiter. You felt like she was looking for someone for.
By the time I was 16, I brought him up to 75 girls, all the ages of 14, 15, 16, people going from 8th grade to 9th grade at just school parties is where I'd recruit him from.
All Jeffrey cared about was go find me more girls. His appetite was insatiable. He couldn't stop. He wanted new, fresh, young faces every single day.
The sheer volume of girls, the frequency, sometimes several or many in the same day, the age of the girls. In some cases, there were victims that didn't know each other, had never met each other, but they had basically the same story.
I remember there was a staircase, and it was kind of like a spiral almost.
And she brings us up the stairs, and it was like spiral stairs.
You walked into his bedroom, around his bed, to almost a very little hall, and then it was another door. And that's where everything would happen, was in his bathroom. He would have a dresser, and it was filled with the first drawer was lotion, and then the third drawer down was sex toys. So we would take the massage table out and set it up in the middle of the room.
And then he came in with his white towel on around him.
And then he just laid down in his towel on his stomach, and he was just talking to people on the phone. When he flipped over, that's when he said, okay, you can go ahead and take off your shirt and pants, but you can stay in your underwear.
He would want us to stand next to him, and he would masturbate while he stared at us, touched us.
You ever socialized with Donald Trump in the presence of females under the age of 18?
I'm going to have to assert my 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment rights, sir.
Were there young women in another part of the house giving massages when I wasn't around? I have no idea of that.
If a president does something which he believes will help him get elected in the public interest, that cannot be the kind of quid pro quo.
The president, in the course of those efforts, misused his authority and his power as president. Presidential impeachment was truly a measure of last resort.
All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're breaking down the details of a whole series of allegations surrounding Donald Trump, Jeffrey Epstein, and, interestingly, the actions of the U.S. government. Okay, let's dive in. So, to kick things off, fundamental idea, something often called the son of Sam rule. The thinking is pretty simple. It just feels wrong to reward a criminal for talking about their crimes. And you need to keep that principle in mind because it's really the foundation for the main allegation here. So here's how we're going to break this down. We'll walk through it in 5 parts, kind of like an investigative briefing, to really unpack all the material the source presents. First up, we're looking at a prison interview with Ghislaine Maxwell. But what makes this one so unusual is who exactly was doing the interviewing. A very senior official from the Trump administration's Justice Department.
No criminal, certainly no one convicted in conjunction with a horrific crime like child sex abuse, no criminal should be given a reward for doing interviews about their crimes, right? It's instinctively repulsive to us as Americans. But of course, that is what Donald Trump's Justice Department appears to have just done in the case of Ghislaine Maxwell, who was convicted of crimes related to mass child sex abuse in the Jeffrey Epstein case. Trump's Justice Department sent Trump's former personal defense lawyer, who now has the #2 job in the U.S. Justice Department, he sent that man to go meet with Ghislaine Maxwell in prison, do an interview, and then she immediately got a big, very important material benefit. She got bumped down to a minimum security prison where a sex offender like her is not allowed to be unless they get some special dispensation from on high, which apparently she got just after doing this interview with the president's former personal defense lawyer. Special treatment and a reward for an interview about her crimes, not from some craven tabloid or some, soulless exploitative publisher like New York State legislators were worried about in the 1970s. No, this is from the president's administration. This is from the federal government. And in that interview, it's not like the president's lawyer was pressing her real hard on what she was telling him. At one point, Ghislaine Maxwell volunteered in this interview that there were multiple members of President Trump's cabinet who had been involved with child sex abuser Jeffrey Epstein. Now, in the interview, the president's lawyer, we can hear, it's on the tape. The president's lawyer hears her say that about multiple members of President Trump's cabinet, and he responds to her saying that by not asking anything about it. You can listen to it. She volunteers. Members of Trump's cabinet, people who the president's lawyer would value as colleagues, she says. She says they were among the people who she knows socialized with Jeffrey Epstein. She says that bluntly. And then listen to how Donald Trump's lawyer responds to that. Listen to the long pause he greets that information with, and then he just leaves it sitting right where it is and moves on to a different topic.
Yeah, so this meeting is flagged as being really, really weird. The source makes a huge point of this. The person sent to interview Maxwell wasn't just some agent. It was the #2 official at the entire DOJ, who also happened to be Trump's former personal defense lawyer. That detail kind of sets the stage for everything that was supposedly discussed. And this is where it gets wild. Here's a direct quote from that interview transcript. Maxwell allegedly says, out of the blue, that several members of President Trump's cabinet used to socialize with Jeffrey Epstein. And look at how she phrases it. She calls them people the interviewer would value as your coworkers. Now, you'd think a comment like that would trigger a million follow-up questions, right? Who? Which cabinet members? Tell me everything. But according to the source, that's not what happened. Instead, there's this long, awkward pause, and then the official just completely changes the subject. That explosive claim is just left hanging in the air. The key takeaway here is the allegation that a top law enforcement official was handed this bombshell and just let it go. Okay, so that's the interview. But the story doesn't end there. Let's look at what the source claims happened right after this meeting, because it alleges Maxwell got a pretty significant benefit almost immediately.
Did I think these guys were coming for that? I really don't. If you met Epstein, there is no way that this cast of characters, of which it's extraordinary, some of you in your cabinet, who you value as your co-workers and would be with him if he was a creep or because they wanted sexual favors. A man wants sexual favors, he will find that. They didn't have to come to Epstein for that. Now, okay, I don't know. I wasn't there. I didn't see it.
So when's the last time you think you were with Mr. Epstein when he got a massage?
So this woman who's in prison, a 20-year sentence because of her crimes, she committed with Jeffrey Epstein. She says, you know, hey, members of Donald Trump's cabinet were involved with this thing that I was part of. Were involved with Epstein. She said, plural, right? Some are in your cabinet. Some are in your cabinet who you value as your coworkers. Multiple members of the president's cabinet were involved with Jeffrey Epstein. And the response to her volunteering this in this interview is not, who? Which members of the cabinet? Say what now? The response is, long pause, let's move on. So the president's name, it's been reported, appears multiple times in the Justice Department's documents about the Jeffrey Epstein child sex abuse case. The FBI reportedly assigned agents to redact Donald Trump's name from the files in the Jeffrey Epstein case. The Justice Department is refusing to release all of its files and documents from the Jeffrey Epstein case. They are coddling and rewarding and doing favors for the one living person currently in prison for crimes related to Epstein's case, even as she is volunteering to them that there are more high-ranking Trump officials who were involved with Epstein. In that context, today, the New York Times reported on thousands of documents about Epstein's finances that were submitted to the U.S. government by his longtime banker, J.P. Morgan Chase. Records of more than 4,000 Epstein financial transactions totaling more than $1.1 billion, which J.P. Morgan reported to the federal government as possible evidence of his child sex trafficking. Reported to the federal government, so therefore in the hands of the federal government. It has been nearly a week since Democratic Senator Ron Wyden formally demanded last week that Trump's Treasury Department release its thousands and thousands of files on Epstein's financial records. On top of that, NBC News reports as of this weekend that Trump's Justice Department is now specifically opposing the news organization's request to unseal the names of two people who Jeffrey Epstein paid in 2018. He paid one of them $100,000 and another $250,000. Federal prosecutors described these people as potential co-conspirators of Epstein who were paid off by him.
This is where the idea of a quid pro quo comes in. You know, a this for that deal. The source is suggesting a direct link between that prison interview and what happened next. The source presents this as a huge reward. I mean, think about it. Getting transferred to a more comfortable minimum security facility is a massive deal for any prisoner. But for a convicted sex offender, that's something that reportedly requires a special sign-off from way, way up in the federal government. And the timing, right after this very specific interview, is presented as being way too perfect to be a coincidence. The allegation, really, is that this reward was directly tied to what was said, or maybe what wasn't pursued in that prison meeting. From there, the source kind of zooms out a bit. It starts to paint a picture of what it calls a much wider pattern of behavior by the administration, all seemingly aimed at keeping information about the Epstein case under wraps. And we're not just talking about one thing. The source alleges a whole series of actions across different government agencies. You've got the FBI reportedly being told to scrub Trump's name from files, the DOJ refusing to release certain documents, and fighting to keep other names secret, and then the Treasury Department allegedly holding back thousands of financial records. Taken together, it's presented as a coordinated effort. Okay, so we've talked about these big institutional moves. Now the focus shifts to something much more personal, almost tangible. We're talking about actual artifacts and documents.
Federal prosecutors described these people as potential co-conspirators of Epstein who were paid off by him. Federal prosecutors described those payments as potential witness tampering. NBC News reports that Trump's Justice Department has formally asked a federal judge to keep those names secret, as NBC seeks to have them unredacted. And now today we get this, which President Trump said did not exist. Donald Trump, in fact, sued the Wall Street Journal when they reported this summer that Trump had signed a birthday book for Jeffrey Epstein with some sort of a crude doodle of a naked woman and an enigmatic note from Trump to Epstein that seemed to suggest some kind of shared secret between them. Trump denied he had done any such thing and brought a big splashy lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal for publishing the claim that he had done such a thing, that such a letter with a doodle on it like that did exist. Well, now today, in response to a congressional subpoena, what do you know? There it is. The text apparently written by Donald Trump to child sex abuser Jeffrey Epstein. This is what it says. Voiceover. There must be more to life than having everything. Donald. Yes, there is, but I won't tell you what it is. Jeffrey. Nor will I, since I also know what it is. Donald. We have certain things in common, Jeffrey. Jeffrey. Yes, we do, come to think of it. Donald. Enigmas never age. Have you noticed that? Jeffrey. As a matter of fact, it was clear to me the last time I saw you. Donald. A pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret.